NBC27 Digital Now Center. This is Beyond the Forecast with your most accurate local meteorologists.
Here we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dan Tomaso. Great to see you at us on a Monday where there's actually some weather happening right outside our window.
Yeah, it's good to see some rain. I mean, I know we've had some rain earlier this month that was very beneficial, but we've been kind of dry again ever since, and we could definitely use some more. And it's good to see at least some coming through now.
We talk about this a lot in not only local weather, but just weather across the country, that unfortunately dry patterns tend to build on themselves.
Yeah.
And in years past, we've talked about how wet weather patterns can build on themselves. This has been one of those situations where we've had almost 2 months of next to no rain. So it's about time that we actually see maybe a weekly occurrence of showers.
For sure, yeah. And now that we're starting to head into fall in a few days, it's nice to actually see some cool weather upcoming too.
Yes.
Because this month has been, for the most part, close to seasonal, but still warmer than average. But it looks like we're going to end the month actually maybe a little cooler than average for a change.
Well, and just looking at some of these recent numbers, if we can pull up the graphics, I mean, today's highs are going to end up in the mid-80s again, similar to yesterday.
Right.
And that's just hitting 1 o'clock.
Right.
You know, if we had a full day of this southerly flow ahead of the front, it's possible we could have been in the upper 80s.
Right, and we had 7 days straight that we did not reach 80 degrees, but that ended over the weekend. We had 81 on Saturday, 84 yesterday, and it looks like some of us did make it or will make it into the mid-80s again. Kind of depends on your location, though, because where the rain has now started, basically you're not going to see temperatures go up much further.
So, in fact, these are probably likely the warmest spots we're going to have all day, so just keep that in mind. Here is a look at radar, and Addis, none of this is all that impressive. It's a steady light rain that we're getting here at the station in uptown Harrisburg, but for areas like Lebanon, Lancaster, in the next hour, you'll begin to see some rain there.
Yeah, the only exception could be maybe over parts of Mifflin, Juniata, and western Perry County, seeing some more moderate rain at times. So Lewistown, Mifflintown, Blaine, Elliotsburg, western and central parts of Perry County are now seeing it. So again, beneficial rain, nothing terribly heavy, but it is coming down steadily and moderately in spots up there. So that'll last for maybe about the next half hour or so, and then we'll move on to the east. So our southeastern communities haven't seen it yet, but as you mentioned, they will see it here over the next 1 to 2 hours. But notice the end of the rain is already back toward Altoona.
Right.
So we are going to see that exit here this afternoon. There could be a few additional spotty showers that develop behind this main batch, but the coverage looks pretty spotty. It probably won't be anything too widespread.
Yeah, I wish we could say this was heavy rain coming down, but likely not, and especially the farther south you go. I mean, this area south of the Turnpike is not looking all that hefty at all.
Yeah, and guidance over the weekend was even showing that areas north and west of Harrisburg would probably have the best chance to see some decent showers.
I'm talking about this right in here, looking pretty meager.
Yeah, not much other than just some light showers. Chambersburg, it'll head over Gettysburg and York. So it's mainly north of the Turnpike where we're seeing some of the steadier showers right now.
And again, Lancaster just starting to cloud over, seeing those clouds moving on through, but still dry there. Some of our other cameras are picking up the rain, of course, but I wanted to show the hour by hour here, and actually this may even be a couple hours behind based on the trends we're getting right now, but we can plan on 70s now for the rest of the day, it seems.
Yeah, the rain-cooled air will limit us in terms of how warm we're going to get this afternoon, so we made it into the 80s. Now a lot of us are going to be dropping down through the 70s, but we're only going to drop down likely into the low 60s overnight tonight.
Right.
So with just a little bit more humidity in the air the last few days, we're not going to see those overnight lows in the 40s and 50s, just not yet at least.
I think it would have been impressive to see. Now, I wasn't up early this morning at 5, 6 a.m., but at least when I looked at 7, 8 o'clock this morning, there were places still in the upper 60s.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
it did not cool off much at all last night, which is not typical here for this time of year.
Yeah, keep in mind our average low is now at about 57 degrees. So anytime we're in the upper 60s now, that's way above average. But Dan, we're going to be below average by the end of the week.
So that brings us to the kind of parade of fronts here. And so the first one is moving through today. Off screen, actually, toward northwestern areas of Canada, seeing now some cooler air diving in a little bit. And this is when I can nerd out a little bit because we're on Facebook Live, and I know people like this stuff. There's no time limit, but we were watching a typhoon in the western Pacific that we knew was going to have some impact on the United States. Now, this is something we call a recurving track of a typhoon. Explain what that can do to the overall weather pattern. Right now, we've been seeing a lot of west-east flow, quick action across the United States, but something like this is kind of like the old stone throw into a creek, right? You're creating a ripple.
Yeah, and like you said, our weather comes from west to east, right? So typically what we look for, especially as we head into fall and winter, is seeing what's happening in the Pacific. And so a lot of times, if we have a weather pattern that's going on, something that can throw a wrench into that pattern is a recurving typhoon. Because what happens is such a powerful typhoon, I don't remember the name of it, but it
Begin
was,
with a B, I think, and I couldn't pronounce it if I tried.
and
I don't
it's
think.
okay, it's not that important. But it was in the Western Pacific, and it took this curve up to the north, and
Very
it
far
basically,
north.
yeah, and it got ingested into the upper level pattern by the jet stream, and it actually turned it into a very powerful,
Wow.
as we say, extratropical
Yes,
storm
indeed.
over Alaska. And so what that can do then is create a ripple that basically then can be transitioned downstream too.
Mm-hmm.
So the pattern maybe can be opposite of what it was, because you start to get a trough, then a deep trough into Alaska. That then means a ridge into the west coast, and then that can allow a trough or a dip in the jet to move further east. And so it basically just depends on exactly how deep these troughs are, the exact wavelength of them, how it affects it. But overall, we do see changes downstream, and that's going to arrive into the northeast this weekend.
And I think one thing to consider is just kind of think of, kicking the weather pattern.
Yeah.
It's a jump start. It's almost like you had this steady state for a while. Things didn't really change. We've seen this big area of high pressure over the west, creating huge drought, huge heat for areas like the central U.S. and the west. Then all of a sudden, this relatively small storm can throw that all out of whack,
For
all
sure.
out of balance. And
Yeah.
it's really interesting to watch.
And it's hard to see sometimes ahead of time, because really when these recurving typhoons happen, we don't know for a little while
Right.
how it's going to affect the
It's
weather.
like watching Fiona.
Right.
We don't have an exact
The
track all the time. Right.
So it's similar with the long-range weather pattern. Is we don't know the exact influence it would have on us, but we know it's going to change. But now we know the change is going to be a cool down for us.
Right.
And I was looking over the weekend too, just looking at exactly how cold this air is going to be that moves in over our heads, and it's pretty climatologically impressive. I
Yes.
mean, we look at for us meteorologists and weather enthusiasts, a lot of times we look at temperatures at 850 millibars. That's about I think 5,000 feet up into the atmosphere.
And we don't look at the numbers exactly. We look at departures, which
Correct.
is always a fun word.
And the departure from average is it's toward the upper end, or I should say lower end, just from talking about climatological extremes. Like, it does not get much colder than that this time of the year.
Right.
And just as a reference point, the 850 millibar temperature is going to drop to around freezing.
I saw
later this
that.
week, and that's impressive. I mean, that's 5,000 feet above
And
our
did
head.
I see north of us, north of Pennsylvania, like negative 10
Yes.
degrees C?
Something like that,
Yeah.
-5.
So
yeah.
another thing, too, is even though in the U.S. we use Fahrenheit so fluently, the rest of the world uses Celsius. So
Right.
a lot of the forecast models we look at, we translate in our head from Celsius to Fahrenheit. We both had a weather professor that said you need to speak fluent Celsius.
That's right,
And
because the
so
rest of the world uses it, and you
Correct.
need to be very quick at converting it in your
Correct.
head.
So that's the long wave pattern. Let's go back a little bit closer to home. Again, this front not producing a lot, and by 4 or 5 o'clock, this is actually a little bit faster than what I
Yeah.
showed during the noon. It's gone and out of here, and maybe even some clearing, some late day sun. Now with sunset earlier and earlier, it seems. Any little bit counts.
Yeah, and this is a cold front, so even though it's not going to cool us down, there will be some dry air that moves in behind this. So tomorrow, lots of sunshine. Overnight, we're going to drop down to the low 60s. Tomorrow, we're back into the mid 80s. So the next few days are still going to be plenty warm.
Pretty,
I mean, even into Wednesday too.
Pretty
looks
even,
warm.
Steven.
Yeah.
We're not changing a whole lot, even though there is this front coming on by. The air mass behind it's not much different than what we have right now.
Right, and notice through most of Wednesday too, we're dry. Now Wednesday is an interesting day, because by Wednesday night the cold front starts to get closer to us. Now at this point, the timing of the front looks like it's going to move through here probably Thursday morning. That is not a very favorable timing
No.
for us to see a lot of rain or big storms. But if we are going to see some heavier showers or maybe a few rumbles of thunder, it looks like it would arrive late Wednesday night into Thursday morning.
So here's the longer range view of
Yeah.
that. So we were looking at a high res model, which we call precision cast, but this is actually the European model forecast. And this shows the front, as you just mentioned, more of
Earlier
a
in the
Thursday
day.
morning
Yeah.
time period. But still some rain with that, some
Yes.
showers. Maybe not thunderstorms, but you were looking at western Pennsylvania, northwestern
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. Wednesday night could be a little bit rocky.
Yeah, because, I mean, think about it. We're going from 80s here to down into the 40s and maybe even upper 30s in
Yes.
some places by Friday and Saturday morning. So this is a big-time front coming through, and there's going to be a lot of wind energy associated with it. So for towns closer to Cleveland, Erie,
Yep.
north and west of Pittsburgh, Wednesday evening could get very interesting. We've got some shear. We've got plenty of warm air ahead of this thing, so we'll have to watch and see if any of that can maybe sneak into some of our western communities.
And listen, anytime you have a significant temperature change, that's going to drive some type of significant
Yes.
weather as a response. So it would not be surprising to see some type of severe weather watch
For sure.
being issued in those areas.
Yeah.
So something to watch for. It may not affect us, but it's still
Close
something to
by.
keep in mind.
And this is the time of year that we typically start to see this little second, not necessarily a bullseye in severe weather, but, you know, if we do see these rare fall severe weather events, they typically happen now in late September into October.
And it's these cool air outbreaks that normally do it.
And, you know, another thing we haven't seen very much of, which is typical this time of the year, is wind. You know,
Yes.
a big breeze. That
So far,
is
not
going
much.
to change this weekend because Thursday and Friday with that front, we could be talking about some wind gusts over 20, even 30 miles per hour.
Something else to keep in mind. This is the windy time of year.
Yes.
It's always the shoulder seasons. It's spring, it's fall in this area where, unfortunately, we can get some pretty nasty days, 30, 40 mile per hour wind gusts, and a consistent 20 mile per hour breeze. So, again, some things to consider in terms of rainfall department. Unfortunately, it's pretty disappointing. We
Yeah.
don't see a whole lot out of it.
Doesn't seem like that our precision cast is handling the current rainfall very well. I think there will be some spots north and west of Harrisburg that probably end up with maybe
I
a
agree
quarter
with
to a
that.
third of an inch. But in terms of additional rain, probably not a ton for our central and southern areas.
Correct. It's mostly going to be dry there. So to kind of wrap this up in a 3-day forecast, we have a few PM showers here today. We're seeing that currently.
Yep.
But again, heading into the evening, a lot of that should dry out. But then Tuesday, Wednesday, another increasing trend in temperatures added. So this kind of goes against what we're talking about, at least initially
Yeah.
with the cool air arriving. But just wait. I'm going to advance it here to the 7-day.
And fall arrives Thursday night at 9:04 p.m. So right on cue, we're going to be dropping into the 50s Friday morning, 60s for highs on Friday. How about that? I can't not tell you the last time we've seen that.
With a breeze, too.
Yeah.
I think all of us are going to be reaching for our long sleeves,
yeah.
pullovers, that type of thing.
and
Might be
then
a little shock to the system.
I agree, but at least it'll hopefully get the bugs away finally.
Well, yeah, that would be a huge plus.
And then that area of high pressure builds in. So I think Saturday morning is likely going to be our coldest morning of this entire setup. And I mean, we're forecasting for HIA 49 degrees. There are some places that could dip down into the mid, even low 40s. In fact,
yeah.
I was just checking before we went on. The National Weather Service's forecast for Bradford, which is in northern Pennsylvania, 38 degrees Saturday morning.
You know something's changing.
Oh, yes. That's impressive. Now, the coldest air is not going to last all that long because notice by the weekend we're back
Right.
into the mid and upper 70s. But it does look like from the end of this week through the end of the month, we are going to be seasonably cool.
Right. If not
For a change.
near average,
Right.
which, again, average this time of the year, think 70s more so than the 80s we've
Right.
had recently. And by the end of the month, that starts to dip closer to the upper 60s. And it happens fast. I mean,
Does.
think about the amount of daylight we lose day by day, week by week. It starts to get reflected in our daytime temperatures, too.
Yeah, and it really is from late September through mid-October that we experience the biggest change,
Yes.
I think. You know, most of September is usually still warm. I mean, that's how it's been
Right.
here this week. But by the time you get to late October, that's when you really start to consistently feel fall. And we're going to get a nice little... This is our first real taste of fall,
First real
I think,
shot
this weekend.
of some things to come.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too. And again, you can watch more about our forecast tonight starting at 5. We did not have a morning show this morning or Good Day PA, but we're back to regular schedule
Yes.
for the rest of the day. So thanks for bearing with us. We hope to do more of these in the future. And I will say, I think the weather's starting to get a little more exciting. It's been sort of dull around here. It's been quiet, but as the seasons change, that's usually when we start to see an uptick. in
And tropical
things.
season is not over by any means.
It is not. And keep in mind that even though we start to see a cool down on land here in the United States, over the water, it takes a lot
Still
longer.
warm. And the Gulf of Mexico is still untouched from the lack of hurricane
still ripe,
activity.
and the East Coast for that matter too. So something to keep in mind for sure. Again, nothing is imminent.
Right.
Let's repeat that. Fiona will go far out to sea likely as a strong Category 3
Sure.
hurricane, but hopefully not bothering anyone once it moves north of Puerto Rico. Addis, thank you very much.
Absolutely, Dan. Good to see you.
Good
to see you
too.
at home.
Yep. Take care, everybody. And again, thanks for watching our Facebook Live.